do what you're comfortable doing and delegate the rest to the people that are going to help you scale and grow. You can't do everything by yourself.
Welcome back to the Mark Ferris Experience. I'm your host, Mark Ferris. Today, we are speaking with Rob Kamranpoor. He is the founder and COO of EME Utility Engineering. He oversees 12 staff and is a real team builder. That was his superpower. We're going to be diving into that and his origin story. Maybe we could start off with that. Rob, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it. I don't know where you want me to start, but I can start from back way in when I got started in business, or
that would be great.
Awesome. I graduated from Ryerson University back in 2004, I would say. Went to electrical engineering, did that. When I came out, I started with a small startup company called Electric Spin. We were working on a golf simulator. That's where I did a little bit of engineering, a little bit of procurement, a little bit of business development, QA, QC. So I got to learn a lot about how a business operates from a startup perspective. Did that for a while. Didn't see much of a growth trajectory there, and I do get bored really fast. So I jumped into a stint with CN Railway. I did that for a while. Working in the field. I was hired in as an engineer, but I found myself in the field doing a lot of hands-on work, digging a lot of trenches, laying cable, and things like that. Again, got to learn different aspects of the world in engineering, as they would call it, which went great. And because of the shift work, it kind of really impacted my mental health. So I stepped back out of there, and I kind of followed pursuit to what my thesis was. I was working on a car alarm system, and I took that concept and I went in and I spoke to a friend of mine whose father was in the business of doing security systems and surveillance. And I said, I've got this idea, I've got this vision. And I remember we were sitting in a car in the middle of the night, and I said, I want to go all in on this. Why don't we, start this business? I'll help it in as much as we can. I don't have any capital, but I'll work my butt off in terms of, starting this business and where we can take it. So he agreed to it. So we started with, my first job was downtown Toronto for about $250. We did an installation at a retail store, and we kind of grew that to about $100,000 in 7 months, doing 2 condos. We were refurbishing the existing, installing new system in the parking lots of 2 apartments. And after that, I built a lot of relationships. One thing I learned in business is it's not the sales that you do, but it's the relationships that you build that get you in the door. So build a relationship with these builders, and it came to a point that they didn't ask us for estimates anymore, and they're like, Rob, just go and do the work and then send us a bill after. So building that trust again in business is vital with clients and customers. And after a while, after doing that for a year, they approached us saying, we've got this project back in Iran where I'm from, and we want a Canadian company to go in, and we want to put you guys there. And we estimated that to be like a $3 million job. And but the reality was, my partner had some constraints, political constraints. He couldn't go back home. I said, I'm not going to do this by myself. So we pulled out. Anyways, did that for a while. I learned a lesson of, partnership with friends don't really mix that well. So that it didn't end up really well. That was a great lesson for me. Went back to the 9 to 5 job, did a technical sales job where I was asked to be a technical advisor. And one of my managers said, I see something else in you. Why don't you do some sales for me, technical sales? So I got into doing technical sales. It came out to where I was just building relationships. I didn't know anything about sales. I ended up hitting 110% of my quota there. They wanted me to expand out to a bigger area. Didn't want to pay me the money, so I walked away from that job. Started my career really with Hydro One. Was there for over 13 years, and I'm kind of still working with them indirectly. Again, I didn't really want to do the design stuff. I wasn't your typical engineer. I like dealing with people. That's my that's what I really enjoy doing. So I got into the project world, worked on multi-million-dollar transmission distribution projects, and then I also had a passion with build like I liked working in teams. I like putting people together. I like that collaboration. So I wanted to get into a leadership role, and I fought pretty hard for years. And it was an uphill battle because again, you don't have the experience. All these jobs that you're applying for require the experience. So when I finally made it in, I think that's when I really found what I really wanted to do in was that leadership. I was able to build like great teams with high engagement, and I figured out like kind of a recipe, I would say, or the formula and how to build those engaged teams, and I started replicating it ever since. So after my senior management role at Hydro One, I got an opportunity. I got called by a recruiter saying, "Hey, there's this small company that's really interested to bring you on board. They want to scale. They want to do X, Y, Z. Are you interested?" So 5 interviews later, or discussions, whatever you want to call it, I made a decision to come out of leave Hydro One after 13 years, which they didn't think I would take the job because it was a much smaller company. So now I'm going from like a 9,000 employee company to a 10 employee company.
Right.
Uh, a huge culture, shock for that fact. But one of the things, Mark, that I I would say I'm a visionary leader because, and a lot of people don't really believe when I say that. I can envision certain things. So when I started that job, and this organization was doing about 5 mil revenue, and they've been around for 40 years. They had a patented product. I looked in the CEO's eyes and I said, "I'm going to take your company to 50 million." And she laughed in my face, rightfully so. And long story short, 6 months later, we hit that 50 million
Wow.
target. And by the end of the year, I think we were about the 70 million mark. Again, things didn't really progress the way I liked them there, and I walked out of there, uh, went into consulting for a bit, didn't like it much, and I said, I'm just tired of the 9 to 5. I love entrepreneurship. Um, I love leadership, so let me come out and do my own thing. So I started the RK Leadership coaching and training about 2 years ago. So I started coaching people for free. I took on five, 6 people to build my brand, to get some testimonials out. And at the same time, I was talking to one of my partners, Chris, who already had EME engineering. He said, let's build a utility arm. You've got the utility background. And I said, you know, I love the challenges. I love, startups and businesses. So I said, why not? Let's do it. So went in there, developed a strategy, uh, started building a small team. Uh, Unfortunately, we had to lay people off after a few months because what we thought would have come to fruition from a work perspective didn't pan out in the timing that we were expecting. So we had to let some of the people go, which was very hard in business, obviously, to do. And here we are now, a year and a half later. We were able to hit 7 figures by the end of the first year. And again, it goes back to I give a lot of credit to the team that I have there. I love what they do every day. They go above and beyond for me, and again, that's where my passion lies. Is mixing that entrepreneurship with the leadership and making things
Mm.
happen.
Wow, there's a lot there, Rob. I made a few notes here. I think everybody that's listening now, and they heard you say that, I figured out the high engagement formula to building teams. So I want to talk about that for sure. The big to small culture shock as well. So going from a big company to a small company, I want to talk about that as well, and then the visionary leader we'll dive into, and then the coaching and training. So there's a few things, but first, why don't you get the suspense out of the way on what this high engagement formula? Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the actions that you've done that actually pull that together. Like if you're going to go in and give advice to an entrepreneur on how to create more engagement, how would you do that, and what's the formula look like?
So honestly, Mark, I think everybody thinks it's this complex formula and it's this complex process that you have to go through. But realistically, it's very simple. At the end of the day, we have to understand that we're dealing with human beings, and when you start treating people like human beings, that's where you get far in life. And it goes back to that compassion, that empathy. uh, my philosophy in leadership is lead with love and kindness. So when you display, and I'm not saying you go out there and you display kindness, but you need to have those boundaries in place, or else people will walk all over you. So I think if you've got the boundaries in place, you treat people with kindness and respect, and you understand that there's a human being on the other side. People got problems. We all have problems outside of work, in our personal life. Listening to people, just simple, sit there and listen to what they have to tell you. Compromising, being flexible. And when you put all these things together, Mark, people will drop that guard down. They'll build that trust with you. And if as a leader, you got to walk the talk. So if you say you're going to do something for them, don't just let it be hearsay, or you want to satisfy a ticky box. Walk the talk, and people will look at you and say, you know what, this guy or this person cares for me. They're putting their neck on the line. They do what they say they're going to do, and I want to do the same. I want to be a part of this team. And this is where I've seen people shine, go above and beyond. Everybody's got that capabilities. We just need to tap in and bring it out of them.
Mm, that's powerful. And Rob, it's interesting because love. So for love is our first core value on Fair's team. Like it's a big one, and then genuine love of people on Fair's Capital. That's our first one as well. And I really believe that love is the ultimate foundation to build a business on. Ultimate, because if you genuinely have a genuine, especially when you're like front facing customer service, like you just because the why love is so powerful. And I like what you said as well, there's boundaries. So it's that doesn't always mean like lovey-dovey. That's not, there's tough love too, and you're doing it out of like a genuine love. I want you to do better. I think you can perform better. I think you can hit new highs right now. You're not living up to your potential. That's a love conversation. And so I think that is not talked a lot about in business overall. And I think that's powerful. And then the talk and walk, lead by example. That's a really big one. And there was interesting. I had shared this on a previous show, the story, but I joined this YPO organization, and so we went in, and there was like a round table. There's probably like 20 people that showed up, 20 different members, and there was a billionaire speaking to us.
Hmm.
And he built one of the largest insurance companies in the world, actually. And he said when he transitioned to CEO, he took it over from his brother, the CEO role. And he said when he first started, he was trying to show everybody how intelligent he was and how competent he was. And he's like, I wasn't making traction. He's like, I didn't get it. And then all of a sudden, he had this aha moment where he flipped from trying to show people how competent he was to focusing on showing people that he had the team's best interest at heart, the individual's best interest at heart. And he says, as soon as I flipped that, people were like, they clung to him
Yeah.
as a leader. And it was
Magic.
such, yeah, it was such a powerful thing because, you talk about it a lot, and this is like this is massive business owner, but people don't really they if you're in the role, they figure you're competent, but if you don't show them that you have a genuine like care for their best interests as well, they're not. So I think what you had shared there is a very powerful. So I could see why you've been successful with it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And another thing, Mark, is again, when I talk about tapping into people's potential, is we when it goes to delegation and growth. One of the things you'll hear from a lot of people in organizations, and you heard it from me, is there was no potential for growth. I don't see growth because there's no development plan for people. There's no coaching. There's very little mentorship. I challenge people right down to my co-ops, and I make them very uncomfortable. And in order for you to grow, I tell them, you have to get uncomfortable. And I create an environment where I allow you to fail because failure is not seen as a negative, negative thing. And we grow from failure. We learn. As long as you're not repeating the same mistake 5, 6 times, that becomes a decision after a while. But I'll give you the freedom to fail,
Yeah.
but learn from it, and you're gone. Like you will learn so much from it. So
Wow.
that's another big thing for me as well.
Yeah, and that's important. And I really like how you're having the conversation with them that the mission is growth here.
Yes.
And I think, purpose and mastery of the role and growth overall is something that A players really want. And I think it's more important today than ever, that aspect. And especially with millennials. Millennials are an interesting group because and the Gen Z and all, like we'll just call them young, any of the young, coming out of university, coming out of high school. It's like they don't work. I'm like, well, my experience, because we have a fairly unfair team on the real estate side, we have a fairly young team. And I found that they're some of the hardest working workers out there. And I was thinking, I'm like, what's the difference there? And it's like there's a strong purpose that we talk a lot about, and then we growth is a really big part of it as well. And so they want to be part of something that's doing big things, or at least is saying, hey, listen, where we are today is not where we're going to be in a year from now. And that's almost worth more than money. Money is still important, but it's not the most important thing. As long you got to make sure you're being fair, and obviously people that are doing really well and super, they deserve to get paid more. But it's just not about money. There's a purpose, like you were saying, there is a big part of it in
Exactly.
growth.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's really good. And one of the other things, Rob, that I learned is that anything in business to be successful long term, it has to be simple.
Yes. Yes.
That's why there's genius in what you said there as well, because I found, through growth, it's easy to get too complex, and you get all these different systems and you get all these different things, and it slows you down as a company.
Yes.
Um, and so that's I think the simplicity side of it is where true wisdom comes in, because that allows you to run faster.
100%. I love that, Mark, uh, and I'll share this with you. And I'm a big believer of that because, again, I've been through those challenges where when you talk about innovation, when you think about innovation, people are always thinking about this complexity, make it more, more features, more this, more that. No,
Hmm.
your clients don't want some of the fancy stuff. They don't want to do X, Y, and Z where you don't need it, because now you're adding so much more work for them. You're adding more confusion on their plate. And my rule is always try to make it simplified. Innovation should be simplifying things, not making it adding more. the gadgets to it and things like that. Make it simplify so the client or your customer can use it a lot easier without having to go through pages and pages and videos and manuals to try to understand how to do something.
Oh man, that's it's gold. It's gold because I mean, and people they're more overwhelmed today than they've ever been, right?
Yes,
I mean, you got social, you got multiple different channels, you're getting pinged everywhere, or you're getting, there's a big grab on your time, and so 100% see it from the customer perspective. And Rob, I don't know if you've seen this in your business, but I found it internally, like we'll take drafting playbooks, for example, and internal SOPs or standard operating procedures, right? So I found that in the past is as we started growing, like we need to have these procedures, and then what we'd have these coaches, we call them coaches, not managers, and on our team, and so they would go and they would draft like this 300-page manual for the department. I'm like, oh, that's great. what what I found is that was that change was so regular because it went so granular and nobody ever went and checked on it. Nobody
yeah,
ever went back to it. It was like it was dust. And so this is where they're still important, but simplicity, simple, like a checklist. Here are the 10 steps. No more. You don't need to. Has that been your experience? I learned my lesson the hard way on that one.
absolutely. So again, some of my initiatives on certain teams when I walk in, not a, even with a startup, you can look at it from a startup perspective. Is I tell my team, no more paper manuals, no more paper procedures. You want to create something, create a video version of it. So when you do a step by step video, the next person that you're onboarding can actually start what again, you're talking about a new generation of the TikTok generation. They're not going to sit there going through 50 pages of a manual. They like watching videos. So I said, create a video, put all the steps on it, speak through the video so they understand why they're doing what they're doing. And then after that, let them ask questions. Let them go trial. We'll create a sandbox for them. But let them come and ask you questions after they've seen certain things. So I think another key aspect of that is the onboarding. How well do you onboard somebody new that comes in? Because if they're not getting any the proper training and you're just throwing books and manuals at them, good luck with that as well.
Yeah. That's a really good point, Rob. I've heard that very first day they start is where the bar is set. So if you really make it a wow, because what's interesting in most businesses is that somebody starts and they come 15 minutes early, and then if you don't like really do a good job on that first day, the next day they show up on time, and the third day they show up 5 minutes 5 minutes late if you didn't set the bar. But if you set the bar really high and you make it like a wow experience, now their standard that they're expecting is you've raised the we'll say the bar so high, and that's where it's like, give them a lot, make them show them a lot of welcome, encouragement. And that first day have like love bombs going off. For us, we do for a new team member coming on, we have like this whole package with swag, branding, logos, and everything, Yeti mugs. And the first day it's like, hey, welcome, phone calls are coming in, and it's like making them really feel welcome on that. But I think that's where the video part of it is really powerful as well, because I think most onboarding that first, we'll say week, it's like, hey, Bill, come on over here, meet John. Bill, show John the ropes. Uh, and then they kind of go, and the ropes are different for everybody. So it's like, yeah, this is what you do there and there, and versus like this is like a curated experience at the beginning. It takes a little bit of work up front, but man, what a difference you can make for somebody.
100%. And consistency is another big thing, Mark.
Yeah.
So some of the horror stories I hear is I started a new job. I didn't get to meet my manager until a month later.
Wow.
How do you expect somebody to be comfortable when they can't even like see you or talk to you in the office? And one of my rules in, I took that phrase, the open door policy, and I tossed it out. So for me, I don't believe in the open door policy because if, again, it goes back to the old style of management where I'm sitting in my office, you come see me whenever you need anything. Whereas what I learned was I grab my ass and I go to every single person out there and I talk to them on a daily basis. I want to have that interaction with my team, knowing that it's called presence leadership. So you got to be there. They know that you're available, and you're not just going up to them when something goes wrong to reprimand them, to yell at them, to scream at them. Just saying how you're doing and learning a little bit about their life, and people will open up and they'll build that trust with you. And I've got a lot of stories that I can share with you in terms of connecting with people, Mark. And I think when that connection as a human being is made, there's nothing more powerful than that, in my opinion.
Rob, can you give maybe maybe a couple of examples where, in generic terms, anyways, of some of the, we'll say, impact that you've made where you've seen people shift because you started figuring, or you started genuinely caring about what's going on in their world as well, just so that our listeners can have some context of what you mean when it's like, be interested in them.
Sure, no problem. So one of the areas in large organizations we had was mental health month. What does that mean? Again, a lot of people don't like it because you bring them all in a room and you're just putting a presentation up and you're putting some slides so you can, do that ticky box. Yeah, we did this. We're good. I took it upon myself, and I'm very, very uncomfortable doing this, Mark, because I was very, I didn't like to share anything about my own personal life with people. I was very, deep in myself for a long time. So I came out, and this is with a team that was the hardest in. I worked with a lot of field people, so if field people in the industry, they're very cut and dry. Where they don't really care about. They hate management. They hate management, and they saw you as like everyone else. There was a revolving door in that area with management, and I get it, and I now understand why they were the way they were. So it was the toughest team I had to ever work with, and it's the greatest lesson I've ever learned in my life, how to deal with people. Um, so I came in, and these are all like hardcore union folks sitting in front of me, and I actually shared a story about my personal life and my mental health struggles. And it was, like I said, very uncomfortable for me to do so, but I wanted to do something different and not put these slides and say, okay, we did this. It was amazing after the fact when I went to my office the next day and the following days, how many people reached out and said, thanks for sharing that. Can I share something with you? And I had, no joke, Mark, two like grown men break down in my office because I put that title away. There was some incidences that happened, and my manager at the time wanted me to reprimand, and I said no, I'm not reprimanding. So I went and sat with them, and I wanted to know what was I. One of the things I love is finding root causes, not band-aid solutions. So I said, you either you tell me what's going on and let me help you, or I have to. You leave me with no choice but go down this road. And I said, when we're sitting here right now, throw my title out the door. It's just you and I sitting here. How can I help you? And this person like broke down, telling me, their personal, a personal matter in their life that had happened. And right at that time, Mark, I said, you're going home. You're not coming back until you go get help. Don't worry about your job. Everything's taken care of. He would call me on a weekly basis, Mark, and just thanking me for what I did. And to me, that's the biggest fulfillment I get as a leader and as a human being, is being able to help someone else out.
That's such a great example. And I think it's a good reminder for all of us as entrepreneurs that when people are acting up or they do something that yeah, you think of how do you, okay, how am I going to reprimand her? How am I going to have a crucial conversation? But I really like that. It's like, what is going on behind the scenes here? Because if something is happening consistently, there's a good chance that something is. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's just their personality, but maybe there is. And I think that if you find it, man, like you can really tap in. And I like what you had said as well about going for the root cause. Like we're not doing Band-Aid here. Because you're
Yeah,
right. If you would have just, well, you can't do it anymore. Okay, here's a stick. You get a couple of whacks, right? And if you do it again, I'm going to give you more whacks. It's like that you still got the root is still needs to be addressed. And so I really like that at diving in, and your how you said it as well. It would come across very much as I genuinely care about you, but like I'm not just going to be pushed aside here either.
yeah,
So I think
absolutely.
that's a powerful way to bring up that conversation.
And it goes back to them seeing me how I stood up and protected my team at that moment, and I took the crap from my hierarchy, but I stood my ground, saying, I'm okay with you reprimanding me for not
Mm,
doing what you told me, but there's no way I'm gonna throw this person under the bus to make myself look better, or do it because this is what we have to do,
mm.
right? So
Yeah. No, that's a really good example there. Uh, let's talk a little bit about visionary leadership, because this is a big one. I'm pretty big into the whole, Jim Collins, Good to Great, the visionary level 5 leadership, and then same with the EOS rocket fuel for Gino Wickman and Traction book, where they talk about like the visionary and the integrator, big picture person, and then the doer as well.
that's right.
What is a visionary? And how important is that in a growth of a company?
Personally, I think it's super important, and I think you do need leaders that are able to be those visionaries, because, like I said, if I come into a new role, I see the lay of the land, I talk to people, then I can close my eyes and imagine where I want to take this team to, where I can envision us being in 2 3 years. But you got to also see it from a greatness perspective, because you can close your eyes and see all the negative things in your way as well, and those are the blockages. And if you're doing that, you're manifesting that anyways. So for me, it's that manifesting the good side of it. So I see good, and I'm gonna make that into reality. And based on what you envision, you then create a strategy. Is everything gonna align with what you wanted it from day one? No. Are you gonna fail? Yes. But building that resilience and that grit to get through it, that differentiates you from the rest of the crowd, because you can throw in the towel, you can be frustrated, you can you know kick and punch, and be stressed out about stuff all the time. And you also have to remember that your team is watching your move every single day.
Yeah.
They see your emotions, they see what you're doing, and they feed off your energy. So if you come to work pissed off and you're never happy, you're always pessimistic, you're going to create a pessimistic team just like you. And I'm not saying you're going to be gung ho every day. It's okay to show your emotions at times, but it's also very important to control your emotions as a leader.
Oh, that's so good. I really like that. That when you go into a company, even though there is some bad there, like actually visualize what is good there and like blow that up in your mind. Just like there's a study done by these 3 basketball groups for free throws. You probably have heard the story where it's like one group is shoots actual practices free throws for a week. The other one visualizes throwing free throws for a week, but they don't practice, and the other one does nothing. And it was like the ones that actually visualize throwing the free throws, they actually improved pretty much the same as the physical practice. And so in
Yes,
this case here, it's like setting that vision. And it's like, so that means actually creating a picture in your mind of what the future looks like.
that's right. Exactly.
So this is a big, I like what you said also that I wanted to ask a follow-up question on. The the energy that the team thrives off the leader. So this is a big one. And so leading a team, leading a company is can be tough. It can be like, you get roller coaster of emotions, right? You're good, and all of a sudden you're at a cost crunch, and then it's like, oh, we got, people, things come up, and it's like bombs going off, and all the rest of it. How is there anything you'd suggest to do to actually come prepared for work on a daily basis? Is there any sort of like pre-routine that you do or suggest to be able to get somebody in the proper state before showing up?
Absolutely. So again, it's, a lot of people have various habits, and I think it's important to have, those positive habits. So one of the things I do with my coaching in coaching new leaders, older leaders, I always say if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead other people. And one thing I've learned about myself is to realize who I am, become aware of who I am, do the self reflection, but at the same time, taking care of your mind, body, and soul. So I think it's all connected where we think these two operate differently. What you put in your body, your eyes, your ears impact your mind, your gut, everything. So for me, it's waking up with going through a gratitude exercise. I exercise every day. I play hockey. I try to stay. I try to get that physical, fitness piece. I try to be positive as much as I can in terms of doing the gratitude exercise before going to bed and waking up. And, I also suggest that when you are going through a negative aspect of your life, grab a journal, write stuff down, download all that negative crap out of your mind. So when you're sleeping, you get a good night's sleep. And every time you have those thoughts, get it out of your system. And you'll see that, your mood will shift. It's just taking care of yourself, Mark. And I'm a huge advocate of the physical lifestyle because that physical lifestyle impacts here.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I really like what you had said before you go to bed. Like, write it out and get it out of your mind and just download it rather than it rolling around. And, like, as an entrepreneur, listen, like, there's things that come up, and it's not easy. And that whole idea that Elon Musk said that entrepreneurs started businesses and rolling through a business is like staring into the abyss, chewing on glass. It's like, it's hard. It can be hard. And, so this is where this kind of stuff is this is gold. And I think that from a physical standpoint as well, I know for me, when I'm active and I'm in my routine, is just, stress in itself doesn't hold you the same way. uh, Quick story on that. I heard this other guy, he built like, he was 100, he did over, his business is over 100 million. And he started, uh, uh, in building these dredging machines. And so they would basically go in, and it was like different countries. And his story, his whole thing when he started his story was a frog in a stork's mouth, but the frog was holding on to the stork's neck while he was in the, and is like, the thing of this, his whole story was don't give up. And I talked to him after, and I said, "How on earth did you push through?" Like, there were times, he ended up going through a separation. He ended up going bankrupt. He ended like his. It was just phenomenal the hardships the guy went through, and he just kept going. He's like, what kept you going there? He's like, well, he goes, he goes. What really helped me was I would run through the forest screaming, and he's like, that seemed to help a lot. So he would just like physically exert himself running through the forest. And so I think there's something powerful, and from a stress relief standpoint, which is a real thing that we got to be aware of, is that, when we're making these high, multi-million dollar decisions, people decisions, life decisions, there's stress there. And we got to, look at that, and I think take action to mitigate that buildup.
For sure. Absolutely, Mark.
Yeah. That's really good. Okay, so the coaching and training. So what would you say would be the main, say your main avatar of, like, is there a certain industry, or is it kind of agnostic in regards to the businesses? And then kind of a follow-up question to that is, what is the main thing that you find that entrepreneurs or your students or coaching members, that you do with them to help them go to the next level?
So I've coached people from various industries, and 16 years old to 60 years old. And you will find a common theme there, and it's the insecurities, limiting beliefs, fear.
Mm.
Biggest thing is fear, and getting out of their own way and getting out of their own head. So again, when I say, learning to lead yourself and working on the mindset, that's what I like to help with, because when you're able to move your negative self out of your way, you're going to see that light shine in front of you, and you're going to actually realize what your capabilities are. And people hold on to things, Mark. And again, for me, it's finding the root causes. And I always, give this disclaimer: I'm not your psychologist or your psychiatrist, but I will dig deep, and you will be. I'm flabbergasted on the aha moments that people have. I don't even know, like, I just get into it. It's this mindset I get into, Mark, when I'm with. I have such a passion, like I said, with helping people out, and it just comes out. And you have those breakthroughs with people, and they're able to realize who they really are. Right, a person that didn't have one of the senior managers didn't have, and again, you would think there's no way this person's ever going to change. They've been like this for so many years. Trust issues. So I'm like, let's go back and let's understand, where did this trust issue come from? Why, where did it stem from? Let's think about it. Let's brainstorm here. And when the individual said, okay, I lost my trust in people from my relationship. And I'm like, now you're doing this to your people at work. And how do you expect them to, be productive and grow? You're doing them a disservice because of it's in your mind, and it's not reality. And when he was able to step back, work on himself, and get rid of that, go talk to him now, Mark, and see what his team does for him.
Incredible.
It's amazing.
There's such a powerful response, and in alignment. I've spoken with some of, like, the top coaches in the world, and they say that in general, the whether it's, generally, like with entrepreneurs, are going to speak to that. That's been more of my experience, is that they say that generally it's never anything to do with, like, tactical in regards to doing the job. It's always mindset,
Yes,
and helping people break through barriers. And so what you said there is 100% in line with what I've, with some of the, like, the top in the world. It's like, how can you help this person mentally, we'll say, get to a point in their mind where they can actually take that next leap up to that next level?
that's right.
Are there any good questions that you, or say, are there any questions, or, like, when you have, say, breakthroughs? I really like what you had said, like, where did the trust issue come from, and dive into more of the root. But is there anything that has been for you, like, when you ask this particular question, um, or you go over something that helps people break through? Like, is there, we'll say, a highly leveraged aspect of, the questions that you ask, that you've used in the past to be able to help people get to that next level?
I kind of do an initial assessment, Mark. So I've created these questions at the beginning to get an understanding of who these people are
Mm.
and what is it that they truly want. Um, I find that, I asked at the beginning, what are your top five goals? What are your top five values? People have a very hard time articulating what their goals are. They're very small, and some people don't even know. They can't even put five values together. But I think it's, customizing once having, again, I ask a lot of questions. And again, as a leader and as a coach, and this is what I teach people is stop dictating to people as a manager of what to do. Ask them questions. If somebody comes to you and says, well, what do I do? Throw it back at them and say, what would you do in this scenario? Why would you do what you do? And get them to think, because this is when you enable and empower your people, is when you get them to think. Because if you're spoon feeding everything to them, how can they ever grow? There isn't a particular question, Mark, that I ask that, gets me there. But I want to know, what is your biggest fear in life? What is your confidence level? Let's say if your confidence level is a 5, what does a 10 look like? And how do we get there? Right? What do we need to do? And I work on that, and I keep, and I'll drill in one core area where I see the problem, and I just make them. The funny thing, Mark, with all of us is we have answers to a lot of our own questions. And this is where, when I say journaling, when I learned how to write stuff down, I started asking myself these questions, and stuff it brewed up. Right. That's how I found what my purpose was in life. I just kept asking myself, what makes me happy? What do I like doing? What gives me that fulfillment? So getting people to see their own answers and get them to realize that they came up with it, not you. I don't come up with stuff. I just ask you the right question.
It's genius because we have in How to Win Friends and Influence People, one of the principles is right. One of the principles is making the other person feel that the idea is theirs. And so the best way to do that is ask questions and have people arrive on their own with the answer versus saying, oh, this is the answer. And what's probably for you, you're probably in your coaching calls and you're like, oh, I can see it, but I'm going to let them reveal it. I would
Yes.
imagine that's how it would be. Yeah,
That's right.
no, that's really smart, and that shows your experience and maturity leading people. That's very clear to me. Rob, we could talk business and performance, and I feel like I just scratched the surface. So maybe we'll have you back sometime. But rapid fire, I got 3 quick questions here, and then we're going to wrap up. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So first question is, I'm a big reader, love reading. Curious, what is your favorite book that's made the biggest impact in your career?
I wouldn't say it's one book, but one of the top ones is the Four Agreements.
Hmm. Okay, perfect. The 4 agreements. All right. Second question for you is, the people that know you best, what are 3 words that they would use to best describe you?
Oh boy. I would say, kind, happy, um, and caring.
Yeah, 100%. We'll add visionary in there too. You
Yeah, sure.
got I'll add a 4th there for you. All
Thank you.
right, cool. And then final advice that you have for the entrepreneurs that are listening that maybe want to take their business to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share this with people. And when you're getting into the entrepreneurship world, um, as a startup or wherever you may be, we often think that because we've started that business and we've got the idea, we're the tech person, it doesn't equate for you to be a leader, to be the CEO of that organization or a leader. Do what you're comfortable doing and delegate the rest to the people that are going to help you scale and grow. You can't do everything by yourself. Figure out internally what are your strengths and weaknesses. If you want to develop your weakness and you want to become a leader, and go and obtain the training and learn how to become a leader before you start hiring people, pissing them off and getting rid of them, and it becomes like a revolving door where you might have the greatest idea in the world, but without your people, your ideas mean nothing.
That's amazing. Rob, what's the best way that the listeners say they want to reach out to you? Maybe they want to learn a little bit more about your coaching and training. what's the best way they can connect and find out more?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn under Rob Kamranpoor. I've got the RK Leadership website. I've got my Instagram under RK Leadership. I've got a YouTube channel, so at RK Leadership Podcast. And I am throwing my second Young Professional Leadership Summit this October, and I would highly, recommend any young leaders out there who want to either get into leadership or are in, the beginning stages of their leadership. For me, it's super important to develop tomorrow's leaders. So, in any way that I can help, and in a lot of cases, if you have a question, I'm not gonna, ask you to pay me money for me to like help you out with certain things. I just really enjoy helping people in that aspect.
It's amazing. Rob, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Lots of value nuggets dropped throughout. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate your time.
Right on. Well, thanks for listening, guys. If you like the show, go ahead and share and subscribe to the channel where we're building a community of full out entrepreneurs. And if you are looking for a real estate opportunity, you like real estate, you like investing in real estate, go to fulloutinvesting.com where you'll find out our 10-step full out investing process where you'll partner with us to be able to buy these large apartment buildings down south. And there is a sample deal in there as well. That's fulloutinvesting.com. Thanks for coming on, guys, and listening to the show. I love you guys and keep on going full out.